The collapse of twin suns of Zirian Prime beat down mercilessly on the cracked Earth, turning the once fertile colony world into a graveyard of dreams. Kai Hendricks adjusted his worn goggles and pulled his salvaged radiation cloak tighter around his shoulders as he navigated the skeletal remains of what used to be New Geneva City. The Terran settlement had been abandoned 3 years ago when the atmospheric processors failed, leaving behind only rust-colored ruins and the stubborn few who refused to evacuate. Kai was one of those stubborn few, though his reasons were more practical than sentimental. As a water prospector, he knew the abandoned sectors still held precious aquifer reserves, liquid gold in this dying world. His modified scanner beeped steadily as he made his way through the debris-strewn streets, following underground water signatures toward the old residential district. The scanner's tone shifted to an urgent trill as he crested a sand dune that had once been Central Park. There, half buried in the crimson sand, lay a figure that made him question his hydration levels. The being was humanoid, but distinctly alien, pale as moonlight, with intricate silver veins visible beneath translucent skin. Long, midnight black hair fanned around a face that was both beautiful and otherworldly, with sharp cheekbones and slightly pointed ears. Kai approached cautiously, his hand instinctively moving to the plasma cutter at his belt. He'd heard stories about the Nephali, the vampire-like aliens, who had once terrorized the outer colonies before mysteriously disappearing decades ago. But this one looked nothing like the monstrous predators from the horror vids. She looked broken. Her chest rose and fell in shallow, labored breaths. Silver tears had dried in tracks down her cheeks, and her lips were cracked and bleeding. Most disturbing of all, she seemed to be whispering something in a language that sounded like wind chimes in a storm. "Hey," Kai called softly, kneeling beside her. "Hey, can you hear me?" Her eyes snapped open, brilliant violet orbs that seemed to hold starlight. For a moment, terror flashed across her features, and she tried to scramble backward through the sand, but weakness overcame her, and she collapsed again with a sound that was part gasp, part sob. "I won't hurt you," Kai said, showing his empty hands. "You're dying out here, aren't you?" She stared at him with those impossible eyes, and when she spoke, her voice was like distant thunder. "You should run, human. I am Sereth of the bloodline Nethys. I am death incarnate." And her words dissolved into a fit of coughing that brought up silver-flecked saliva. Kai studied her more closely, despite her warnings. She looked more like a person in desperate need than a monster. His scanner was still pinging. There was an underground spring less than 50 meters away. But first things first, he pulled one of his precious water bottles from his pack. "Here," he said, uncapping it and holding it out to her. "Drink this." Sereth's eyes widened in shock. You would give me water, knowing what I am right now. You're just someone who needs help," Kai replied simply, "and I've got water to spare." Her hands shook as she accepted the bottle, and she stared at it as if it were made of pure platinum. When she finally lifted it to her lips and drank, the transformation was immediate and startling. Color flooded back into her pale cheeks. The silver veins beneath her skin pulsed with renewed energy, and her breathing deepened and steadied. But what happened next surprised them both. Instead of the gratitude or relief Kai expected, Sereth began to cry out the silver tears from before, but clear, human-like drops that fell onto the sand like tiny diamonds. "I don't understand," she whispered, staring at him through her tears. "Why would you show kindness to one such as me? My people would call this weakness." Kai helped her sit up, noting how she leaned into his touch rather than pulling away. "Maybe that's their problem," he said gently. "Out here, kindness isn't weakness, it's survival." As the twin suns began their descent toward the horizon, painting the wasteland in shades of amber and gold, neither of them realized that the simple act of compassion would change both their worlds forever. Shelter from the storm. The old subway maintenance tunnels beneath New Geneva offered blessed relief from the surface heat. Kai had discovered them during his first year on Zirian Prime, and over time had converted one of the larger chambers into a makeshift home. Solar collectors rigged to the surface powered LED strips that cast a warm glow over salvaged furniture and carefully organized supplies. Sereth moved through the space like a ghost, her alien grace apparent even in her weakened state. She examined everything with curious violet eyes. The hydroponic garden growing in repurposed containers. The communication array cobbled together from colony debris. The collection of worn books stacked beside a comfortable reading chair. "You live here alone?" she asked, accepting a bowl of nutrient broth that Kai had prepared on his compact cooker. "For 3 years now," he confirmed, settling across from her on a patch cushion. "Most folks evacuated when the terraforming project failed. Can't say. I blame them. This world's dying a slow death. Then why remain?" Sareth sipped the broth delicately, and Kai noticed how her silver veins seemed to pulse more brightly with each swallow. "Surely you could find passage to a more hospitable world." Kai was quiet for a moment, stirring his own bowl thoughtfully. "My daughter Emma used to say this place reminded her of the fairy tale deserts. From her storybooks, dangerous, but beautiful. She died in the first plague outbreak, before they perfected the atmospheric scrubbers." He looked up at Sareth's sympathetic expression. "I guess I stay because leaving feels like abandoning her memory." "I understand such loyalty," Sareth said softly, "though mine has cost me everything." "What happened to you? How did you end up collapsed in the wasteland?" Sareth's grip tightened on her bowl. "My people, the Nethali, were once feared throughout the galaxy as predators. We sustained ourselves on the life essence of other beings, what you might call blood, though it was more than mere fluid to us. But 50 years ago, a curse fell upon our race, a curse, the void priests of Krelian Prime, in retaliation for centuries of predation. They bound our biology to something we had never needed before: water." She set down her empty bowl, her movements graceful despite the tremor in her hands. "We, who once drank starlight and blood, now require the most basic element of life. Many of my people saw this as divine punishment and chose exile or death rather than adapt." Kai leaned forward, fascinated. "But not you." "I tried to convince them that adaptation was survival, not weakness. I argued before the High Council that we could forge new relationships with other species, become partners rather than predators." Her laugh was bitter as winter wind. "They branded me a heretic and cast me out. I have wandered the galaxy for 5 years, growing weaker, watching my people's empire crumble as they refused to change. And you ended up here. My ship's water recycling system failed 3 days ago. I chose this world because it was remote. I wanted to die without bringing shame upon any who might remember me kindly." She looked directly at him then, those violet eyes reflecting depths of pain he could barely imagine. "I never expected kindness from a stranger. Among my people, compassion is considered the greatest weakness." Kai stood and moved to his water storage system, a sophisticated purification and collection unit he'd salvaged from the colony's water treatment plant. He filled another bottle and handed it to her. "Maybe that's why they're dying out," he said simply. "On Earth, we had a saying, we rise by lifting others. Seems to me your people forgot that somewhere along the way." Sareth accepted the water with something approaching reverence. "You speak of lifting others, yet you are alone in this wasteland." "Not anymore," Kai replied, surprising himself with the words. "Look, you can stay here as long as you need to. I've got plenty of water, and frankly, the company would be nice. You would trust me, even knowing what I am." Kai considered this as he cleaned their bowls. Outside, the evening wind howled through the tunnel entrance, carrying with it the scent of ozone and distant storms. "You had every opportunity to attack me when you were desperate. Instead, you warned me away. That tells me more about who you are than your species does." Sareth was quiet for a long time, staring at the water bottle in her hands. Finally, she looked up at him with an expression he couldn't quite read. "My true name is Sareth Nithara, last daughter of the Nethi's bloodline. I am 437 of your years old, and I have never," she paused, as if the words were difficult to form, "never felt gratitude like this. It burns in my chest like fire." "That's not fire," Kai said gently. "That's hope." Bonds in the dark sandstorm arrived without warning, turning day into night and forcing them deeper into the tunnel system. Kai's weather monitoring equipment had failed to detect the massive system brewing beyond the horizon, and now they huddled in the innermost chamber as hurricane force winds screamed overhead, threatening to tear apart his carefully constructed home. "The ceiling won't hold," Sareth observed. noting how the reinforced concrete groaned under the storm's assault. Dust rained down from widening cracks, and somewhere in the darkness, metal debris crashed against the tunnel entrance. "We need to get to the emergency shelter," Kai said, gathering his most essential supplies: water purification tablets, emergency rations, and the portable power cell that kept his communication array running. "It's deeper down, built into the bedrock." They made their way through passages that had never seen artificial light, Sareth's enhanced vision guiding them when Kai's flashlight began to fail. Her pale skin seemed to glow faintly in the darkness, those silver veins pulsing with their own inner radiance. "You're beautiful," Kai said without thinking, then immediately felt his cheeks burn. "Sorry, I didn't mean to. Among my people, beauty is measured by the fear one inspires," Sareth replied, her voice echoing strangely in the narrow passage. "I was never considered beautiful by their standards. Their loss," Kai muttered, then spoke louder. "Here, this is it." The emergency shelter was a cramped space, barely large enough for two people, carved directly into the living rock by the original colonists. Kai activated the emergency lighting, casting everything in a warm amber glow that made Sareth's violet eyes shine like gems. They sat close together on the single bench, their shoulders touching out of necessity. The storm raged above them, but here in the deep earth, they were safe and surprisingly comfortable. "Tell me about your daughter," Sareth said quietly. "Emma." Kai smiled, pulling out his personal tablet and scrolling to a photo of a girl with dark hair and laughing eyes. Maybe 8 years old. She was fearless. While other kids were afraid of the alien wildlife, Emma would try to make friends with the crystal butterflies and singing moss. She said everything deserved kindness. She sounds wise beyond her years. She was. When the plague hit, she spent her last days comforting the other sick children in the medical bay. The doctors said she could have lived longer if she'd rested, but she couldn't bear to see others suffer alone. Kai's voice caught slightly. "I've never met anyone with such a capacity for love." Sareth was quiet for several heartbeats. "I had a sister once, Nissa. She was younger by barely 50 years, but she possessed the same generous spirit you describe. When the curse first struck our people, she was among the first to suggest we seek peaceful coexistence with other races. What happened to her? She was executed as a traitor." The words came out flat, emotionless, but Kai could see the pain in Sareth's eyes. "They made me watch." It was meant to be a lesson about the price of weakness. Without thinking, Kai reached out and took her hand. Her skin was cool to the touch, but it warmed under his fingers. "I'm sorry. No one should have to witness that." Sareth stared down at their joined hands with wonder, as if she'd never seen such a thing before. "And for centuries of existence, no one has ever offered me comfort. The Nethali do not touch except in violence or feeding. This." She lifted their hands, studying the contrast between her pale, silver-veined skin and his weathered human fingers. "This is completely foreign to me, yet it feels right." "Maybe that's because it is right," Kai said softly. "Maybe your people forgot something important along the way." The storm continued to rage above them, but in their small sanctuary, time seemed to slow. They talked through the night about Emma's love of desert sunrises, about Nissa's dream of gardens that would bloom between worlds, about the strange paths that had led them both to this dying planet. "I've been thinking," Kai said as his chronometer showed the approach of dawn, "about what you said about your people refusing to adapt. Maybe they just need someone to show them a different way." Sareth raised an eyebrow. "You suggest I return to face those who cast me out. I suggest you prove them wrong, not by argument, but by example." He squeezed her hand gently. "You've survived 5 years in exile. You've learned to live on water instead of blood. You're not the same person they banished. You're stronger, and you believe they would listen. I believe some of them will, the ones who are tired of watching their civilization die of pride." Kai met her gaze steadily. "Besides, you won't be going alone." Sareth's eyes widened. "You would leave this place, your daughter's memory?" "Emma would have loved you," Kai said with certainty. She believed everyone deserved a chance to change, to be better than they were. If there's a chance to save an entire species. He smiled. "Besides, some memories are meant to be carried forward, not buried in the sand." Above them, The storm began to weaken, but neither of them moved to leave their sanctuary. They had found something precious in the darkness, not just shelter from the storm, but the beginning of hope. The choicest merchant vessel Wandering Star arrived at Zirian Prime. 3 days after the storm passed, its captain responding to Kai's long-range transmission. Captain Zara Okafor was a weathered woman with kind eyes and a reputation for taking on passengers that other ships wouldn't touch: refugees, exiles, and those with nowhere else to go. "So you're telling me you want passage to the Nephali homeworld," she said, sipping coffee in Kai's underground shelter while studying Sereth with professional curiosity. "Rather than fear, that's a tall order, friend. The Nephali hegemony has been closed to outsiders for decades. Most folks who try to enter their space just disappear. That's because they've been dying slowly," Sereth explained, her newfound confidence evident in the way she held herself. "Pride has made them isolationists. They refuse outside contact because they see their curse as shameful weakness." Captain Okafor leaned back in her chair. "And you think you can change centuries of thinking? I think I can show them another way," Sereth replied. With help. The captain's eyes shifted to Kai. "And you, water prospector, you're really willing to leave this place behind?" Kai looked around the chamber that had been his home for 3 years. He'd already begun the process of packing his most essential belongings, but leaving felt surreal. This had been his sanctuary, his connection to Emma's memory. "My daughter used to say that love isn't about holding on, it's about helping others grow," he said finally. "I think she'd understand." "Well, I can get you to the edge of Nephali space," Captain Okafor said. "After that, you're on your own. My ship's not equipped for sneaking past hegemony patrol ships." "We won't need to sneak," Sereth said with quiet determination. "I still carry the genetic markers of the Nephi's bloodline. They'll let me through if only to execute me properly this time." Kai felt a chill at her words. "Sereth, it's a risk we must take," she said, placing her hand over his. The simple gesture had become natural between them over the past week, a comfort they both drew from. "My people are dying, Kai, if there's even a small chance. Then we do this together," he said firmly. "Whatever happens." Captain Okafor watched this exchange with interest. "You haven't known each other long, have you?" 6 days, Kai admitted. "And you're willing to risk everything for someone you just met?" "I'm willing to risk everything for someone I care about," Kai corrected. "Time doesn't measure the depth of connection, circumstances do." Sereth's violet eyes shimmered with emotion. "Among my people, such rapid bonding would be seen as madness. We are taught that trust is earned over decades, that love is weakness that leads to betrayal." "What do you think now?" Captain Okafor asked gently. "I think my people have forgotten what it means to truly live," Sereth replied. "We became so focused on survival that we stopped growing, stopped connecting, stopped hoping for anything better." They spent the next 2 days preparing for departure. Kai sealed his tunnel home, leaving behind detailed notes about the water sources he'd discovered for any future prospectors who might need them. He packed light basic tools, his daughter's photograph, and the small collection of books that had kept him sane during the lonely years. Sereth, meanwhile, seemed to transform before his eyes. The broken exile he'd found in the desert was gone, replaced by someone who moved with purpose and spoke with quiet authority. She spent hours in meditation, preparing herself for what she might face among her own people. "You're nervous," Kai observed on their last night in the shelter. "Terrified," she admitted, sitting beside him on the edge of his makeshift bed. "What if I'm wrong? What if they refuse to listen, and I've dragged you into danger for nothing? Then we'll have tried," Kai said simply. "And maybe that's enough." Sereth leaned against his shoulder, a gesture that still amazed her with its simple intimacy. "In 6 days, you've taught me more about strength than I learned in for centuries among my own kind." "You taught me some things too," Kai replied, stroking her midnight hair. "You taught me that it's possible to start over, even when everything seems lost." "Is that what we're doing? Starting over?" Kai considered this carefully. "I think we're choosing to grow instead of just survive." Emma would say that's the most important choice anyone can make. Outside their shelter, the twin sons of Zirian Prime were setting for the last time they would witness together on this world tomorrow. They would board the wandering star and begin a journey that would either save an ancient civilization or destroy them both. But as they held each other in the growing darkness, neither felt afraid. They had found something rare and precious in the wasteland, not just love, but the courage to hope for impossible things. Whatever happens among your people, Kai said quietly, I want you to know that these have been the best days of my life since Emma died, and you have shown me that kindness is not weakness. Sereth replied, it is the strongest force in the universe. Above them, the stars began to emerge in the clear desert sky, each one a distant sun with its own worlds, its own stories of loss and redemption. Soon, they would be among those stars, carrying with them a love that had bloomed in the most unlikely of places and the hope that even the most hardened hearts could learn to change. The returned Nethali homeworld of Nethys Mora appeared on the wandering star's view screen, like a dark jewel set against the void all silver cities and midnight seas under the light of a dying red star. Captain Okafor had managed to get them to the edge of the hegemony's patrol zone before 3 sleek warships surrounded them with weapons charged. This is Shadowblade Commander Vex High of the Hegemony Fleet, came the cold transmission. You carry the genetic signature of the exile. Sereth Nithara, state your business or be destroyed. Sereth stepped forward to the communications ray, her spine straight and her voice carrying the authority of ancient bloodlines. I am Sereth Nithara, last daughter of Nethys. I claim the right of final words before the High Council. A long pause, then, the exile has no rights. The exile has information that concerns the survival of our race, Sereth replied calmly. Unless the High Council has grown too weak to face truth, they will grant me audience. Another pause, longer this time. Kai could almost feel the debate raging across the comm channels between the Nethali ships. Finally, you will be escorted to the surface. The human will remain aboard the merchant vessel. No, Sereth said firmly, the human comes with me, or I say nothing. He is under my protection as my bondmate. Kai raised an eyebrow at this, but said nothing. The concept seemed to carry weight with the Nethali, because after several minutes of rapid conversation in their musical language, the commander grudgingly agreed that the descent to Nethys Mora revealed a civilization in visible decline. Once magnificent, spires stood empty and dark, their crystal surfaces cracked and weathered. The few Nethali they saw on the streets moved listlessly, their silver veins dim beneath pale skin. They're all dehydrated, Kai observed as their escort led them through the capital city's empty boulevards. Look at them, they're barely functioning. Pride, Sereth said sadly. They would rather die than beg other races for the water they need. The High Council convened in a chamber that might once have been beautiful but now felt like a tomb. 7 ancient Nethali sat on thrones of black crystal, their violet eyes dim with exhaustion, and their silver veins barely visible beneath skin like parchment. Sereth Nithara spoke the centermost figure, her voice like wind through broken glass. You return to us contaminated by alien contact. What poison do you bring to our dying halls? I bring hope, High Counselor Valtara, Sereth replied, her voice strong despite the obvious weakness of those judging her. I bring proof that adaptation is not defeat, but victory. You speak heresy, hissed another counselor. The curse of the void priests has already brought us low. Would you have us grovel before lesser races? I would have us live, Sereth shot back. Look around you. This chamber once held 50 counselors. Now 7 remain. Our cities are empty, our colonies abandoned. In your pride, you have chosen extinction over evolution. Kai stepped forward, ignoring the shocked gasps from the gallery. No alien had spoken in these chambers for decades. With respect, counselors, your daughter has spent 5 years learning what you refuse to see, that survival requires change. The human dares speak in our sacred hall. Valtara's eyes flared with the first real energy Kai had seen from her. The human offers what you desperately need, Kai replied calmly. He activated a portable holographic projector, showing images of water purification systems, hydroponic gardens, and atmospheric processors. Water, enough to sustain your people while you rebuild your civilization. At what cost? Demanded another counselor. What does humanity ask in return? Partnership, Sereth said. taking Kai's hand in full view of the assembly. Not as predator and prey, but as equals. The galaxy is vast enough for both our peoples to thrive. The murmurs from the gallery grew louder, some angry, others thoughtful. Veltara raised a trembling hand for silence. You ask us to abandon everything. We are, she said. I ask you to become everything you could be, Sereth replied. For 5 years, I have lived among humans. I have seen their capacity for kindness, their willingness to help even those who have wronged them. They do not see our curse as weakness, they see it as an opportunity for alliance. Kai squeezed Sereth's hand gently, then addressed the council. Directly, the human colony worlds have water to spare. We also have technologies that could help you adapt your biology further. Make the transition easier for your people. All we ask in return is friendship. And if we refuse, Veltara asked, then you continue dying, Sereth said bluntly. And I will take any who wish to live to human space, where they can build new lives free from the chains of pride. The debate that followed lasted hours. Some counselors spoke of honor and tradition, others of survival and pragmatism. Through it all, Sereth stood tall beside Kai, no longer the broken exile he'd found in the desert, but a leader offering her people a path to redemption. Finally, as the red star began to set beyond the crystal windows, Veltara spoke again. We will consider your proposal. But know this, daughter of Nethys, if we accept this alliance, there can be no return to the old ways. The old ways led us here, Sereth replied. Perhaps it's time for new ones, later. As they waited in quarters that were both prison and palace, Kai found Sereth standing at the window, watching the few lights that still glowed in the dying city. Do you think they'll accept? He asked, wrapping his arms around her from behind. Some will, she said, leaning back against his chest. Others will cling to the old ways until the end. But it's a beginning, and if they don't, if they exile you again. Sereth turned in his arms, her violet eyes bright with possibilities he'd helped her discover. Then we'll build something new, together. Maybe that was always the plan. Kai kissed her forehead gently. Emma would have loved to see this. Her fairy tale desert princess, saving her people through the power of kindness. Our people, Sereth corrected softly. If we're truly bondmates, then their future is our future. As the first of Nethys Mor's 3 moons rose over the ancient city, they held each other close and watched the slow rebirth of hope begin to kindle in the darkness. It would be years before the Nethali fully embraced change, and longer still, before the wounds between species could heal completely. But they had time, they had love, and most importantly, they had each other to face whatever tomorrow might bring, whether among the stars, or in some distant desert where kindness could bloom in the most unlikely places.